The Foreign Affairs Minister of Venezuela, Yvan Gil, was received in Beijing by his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi for an official meeting. In Palestine, at least 75 people were killed in the last 24 hours by Israeli attacks in the heart of the devastated Gaza Strip. And the International Economic Forum kicked off in the Russian city of St. Petersburg, focusing on the transition to a multipolar model of the world economy. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos, and from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba, we begin with the news. The Foreign Affairs Minister of Venezuela, Yvan Gil, was received in Beijing by his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi for an official meeting. The Venezuelan foreign minister ratified the alliance of peace and respect between both countries, as well as the promotion of joint projects in the field of economic and social development, where both chancellors will fulfill a broad agenda of evaluation and follow-up of the agreements that pursue the prosperity of China and Venezuela. The Venezuelan delegation arrived in Beijing with the objective of giving continuity to the work undertaken by President Nicolás Maduro in September of 2023 with the consolidation of a strategic cooperation with China.
The China-Venezuela strategic partnership has been a model of solidarity for almost 50 years under the principles of mutual respect, equality, solidarity, and non-intervention, being a pillar of the new multipolar geopolitics. With the arrival of Commander Hugo Chávez to the presidency, China-Venezuela relations acquired a strategic character by outlining a cooperation map that prioritizes shared benefits and counteracts Washington's hegemonic pretensions in Latin America and the Caribbean. In 2001, both nations raised their relationship to a strategic partnership for shared development, which laid the foundations for the China-Venezuela High-Level Joint Commission, a mechanism for planning and executing cooperation projects that came into effect after Jiang Zemin's visit to Caracas. As of 2013, a new stage in Beijing-Caracas relations began with the leadership of Nicolás Maduro and Xi Jinping, consolidating themselves as key partners beyond the economic, commercial, and financial spheres. Both heads of state signed cooperation projects that are currently reflected in more than 600 strategic agreements based on a humanistic vision of shared development that seeks to satisfy the needs of the people under the premise of guaranteeing the prosperous progress of the Beijing-Caracas partnership.
And the Venezuela Nuestra, or Our Venezuela campaign command of President Nicolás Maduro, together with social organizations, denounced that the far right is preparing scenarios to try to delegitimize the upcoming presidential elections of July 28th. From Caracas, our correspondent Lionel Retamal offers more details.
The coordinator of President Maduro's campaign denounced in a press conference that the Venezuelan opposition is creating scenarios to denounce fraud in view of an eventual triumph of the incumbent president.
They have it already prepared. Guess what? Guess what they are going to say? Fraud. Just like the Mexican far-right, the Venezuelan right-wing and far-right will do the same. Write it down. They are going to claim fraud. Please, write it down.
Spokespersons of the extremist right-wing campaign confirmed it. Recently, former opposition deputy Thomas Guanipa, without evidence, stated that there will be fraud in the upcoming elections. The strategy, analysts assure, includes fabricating triumphalist matrices in the social networks, together with bots and pollsters' results, in order to ignore an eventual triumph of Maduro.
Behind all this, there is a whole idea that the election has been won a priori by this sector of the opposition. And of course, this air of triumphalism shows that there is no possibility of a legitimate victory of Chávez followers, which effectively give a conditioning to the presidential election. They say, if the candidate that we are projecting does not win, then it is because it was a fraudulent process.
In the spirit states, the population is committed to maintaining peace and rejects scenarios of violence, such as those experienced in previous years.
They might claim it, but they have always done that. Every election they claim fraud, because they never win. They don't stand a chance.
And unfortunately, the opposition does not know how to lose, and they are always inventing a little trick or something to get noticed in other places. But no, unfortunately for them, it will not work out, because we are aware.
The extremist sectors competing in the elections have not committed to recognize the results. In the past, against Chavez and Maduro's previous wins, the opposition denounced frauds, without ever being able to prove them. But this strategy generated violent events, even causing deaths.
This certainly opens the door to possible scenarios of violence that until now seemed very far and seem to have been already overcome in Venezuela. But this tendency to declare victory prior to the presidential election leaves no other scenario but the path to extremism in the recognition of the elections, which is very dangerous for the country.
From the campaign of Maduro, they say they will seek to guarantee peace with the use of justice and the mobilized people.
Whoever violates the peace of the Republic before, during, or after the election must go to jail. Whoever violates the peace of the Republic must go to jail. It is clear to you. You have been warned. You have been warned. Here we are heading to the election in peace.
At the time of the registration before the electoral power, 9 of the 10 opposition candidacies committed themselves to respect the laws and the electoral results.
teleSUR, Caracas, Venezuela.
In other news, on Tuesday in Argentina, the administration of Javier Milei suffered another defeat in Congress when the Chamber of Deputies approved a new mechanism to adjust pensions over inflation. After a day of negotiations, lawmakers approved the project in a historic feat that brought together a total of 162 votes from all sectors of the opposition to the administration of Javier Milei. The reform stipulates that the initial recovery of pensions should be of 8%, while the minimum amount should not be less than the value of basic products for monthly consumption for the elderly. The reform seeks to link pensions adjustment not only to inflation but also to income. The bill will now go to the Senate, where it can be approved or sent back with amendments. Now let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the south. In Palestine, at least 75 people were killed in the last 24 hours by Israeli attacks in the heart of a devastated Gaza Strip. Heavy Israeli bombardment claimed the lives of 11 civilians in the Al-Maghazi refugee camp after destroying several homes. Medical sources reported that morgues are overflowing and hospitals are struggling to cope with an increase in casualties following attacks by Zionist fighter jets and artillery in the densely populated city of Deir al-Balah. Since the beginning of its genocidal war in Gaza, at least 36,550 Palestinians have been killed by Israel, while some 83,000 have been wounded and thousands of corpses lie under the rubble.
We are homeless. What have we done? You expelled us from our homes, claiming you want to eliminate Hamas and send war, but you haven't done either of those things. Netanyahu, do you want to take revenge on children? Sleeping children and women? What have you achieved? What are your goals? The water is polluted. There is no electricity. There is no gas. Cook with firewood. Our hearts are broken. We constantly hear that a son, a neighbor, or a loved one has been martyred.
In parallel to the genocide committed by Israel in Gaza, over 800 Jewish extremists stormed the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem's Old City on Wednesday, carrying Israeli flags and chanting provocative songs in celebration of Flag Day. Under heavy police protection, the extremists stormed the Muslim holy site. While it is also a Jewish holy place since 1967, an agreement stated that worship at the site is reserved for Muslims, while Jews can only enter as visitors and pray at the nearby Wailing Wall. Rabbis and officials, including the far-right minister Yvan Gil, also took part in the demonstration. Flag Day celebrates the end of the 1967 war, which gave way to the illegal occupation of the West Bank and East Jerusalem. And Prime Minister Netanyahu assured on Wednesday that Israel is ready for a very intensive operation on the border with Lebanon. Since October, the Israeli occupation forces have been exchanging fire with the Hezbollah resistance movement, as the Lebanese movement has been supporting the Palestinian cause in the face of Tel Aviv's genocide in Gaza. On the other hand, local media denounced an increase in the number of Israeli attacks on Lebanese territory over the past week, while the Israeli National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir and Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich have called for urgent measures to restore security in northern Israel.
We are ready for a very intense operation in the north. One way or another, we will restore security in the north.
We now move on to other topics. Several Latin American countries are experiencing the climate crisis with heat waves, forest fires, and water supply shortages.
Guatemala is going through a severe water and environmental crisis due to the forest fires that destroyed more than 40,000 hectares of forest between December 2023 and May 2024. The nation also suffered a drought that wiped out the crops of thousands of families. In Honduras, people are going through a severe drought, forest fires, and a layer of polluted air, which covers most of the country's departments. The government has recommended the use of masks due to the high levels of pollution. In El Salvador, uncertainty due to the effects of climate change, the current political situation have affected the country's youth. Salvadorans migrate to flee drought and persecution brought on by Nayib Bukele's government's state of exception. During the first 5 months of 2024, the effects of climate change had a strong impact on Latin America, affecting the quality of life of its population.
In South Africa, authorities reported on Tuesday at least 22 people killed on the eastern coast after flooding caused by torrential rains and fierce winds. Authorities said that also 2 rare tornadoes were spotted and temperatures plunged as snow fell in some central regions. A spokesperson from Nelson Mandela Bay municipality stated that more than 2,000 people have been evacuated from the area. Local authorities launched an appeal for donations of clothing, food, and blankets. The National Meteorological Institute reported that the country is in the grip of a cut-off low pressure system marked by heavy rains and a cold snap that can also bring hail, snow, and strong winds. We have a final short break coming up, but before, we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and also share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back from the South. The International Economic Forum kicked off in the Russian city of St. Petersburg, focusing on the transition to a multipolar model of the world economy. It is one of the world's largest economic forums, which annually brings together political, business, academic, and other leaders to discuss the most relevant economic issues in emerging markets and the world. The event has been held annually since 1997, and since 2005, it has been sponsored by the President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, who also confirmed his participation in this year's edition that will last until June 8th. Over 18,000 people from 139 countries and territories will attend the event, in spite of the thousands of Western sanctions illegally imposed on Russia. In this context, the Russian-Venezuelan session of the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum was held on Wednesday at the Convention and Exhibition Center. In this sense, speakers at the business dialogue discussed the prospects for cooperation between the two countries in the field of investment, tourism, and education. In this way, both nations were represented by Venezuelan ambassador to Russia, Jesus Rafael Salazar Velázquez, and on the Russian side, the director of the Latin American Department of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation, Alexander Shetenin, and the permanent representative of the Republic of Crimea to the President of the Russian Federation, Georgy Muratov. The world's largest economic forums of the year start on June the 8th to work on the construction of a fair world dynamic. From St. Petersburg, our correspondent Oleg Yaklinsky with the details.
Greetings from the 27th St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. This important international event started today and ends on June 8th. The main program is divided into 4 thematic blocks. They are as follows: the transition to a multipolar world in the world economy, the Russian economy, objectives and tasks of the new cycle, technologies in the service of leadership, and healthy society, traditional values and social development as priorities of the state. The event will be attended by the President of Bolivia, Luis Arce, the Foreign Ministry of Hungary, Peter Szijjártó, the Prime Minister of the Central African Republic, Felix Molua. In addition, Russian President Vladimir Putin, as always, will be at the forum and is scheduled to meet with his Bolivarian counterpart. In addition, there will be other international contacts of the Russian president. Within this forum, the arrival of delegations from Cuba, Turkey, Venezuela, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iran, and other countries was already being confirmed. In total, delegations from more than 130 countries are expected to attend. The first edition of this forum was held in 1997, and since 2006, the forum has been organized every year under patronage and participation of the Russian president. Last year's forum was attended by more than 17,000 participants from 130 countries in person or virtually, and more than 900 trade agreements were signed for a total amount of 3.860 billion rubles, which is equivalent to about 43 million. But the meaning of this forum is not only economic, it is also a step towards building a fairer and more equitable world for all.
Desde St. Petersburg para teleSUR, Oleg Yaklinsky.
In other news, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced on Tuesday his victory in the general elections, while the votes are still being counted, in which his party and those of his allies have a narrow majority to secure a third consecutive term. India's Electoral Commission announced that the Indian People's Party was leading with 240 seats out of the 543 that make up the lower house of Parliament, and that the coalition to which it belongs was leading with 285 seats out of the 272 needed to form a majority. The results indicate that the head of government, Narendra Modi, will need the support of other parties to govern, an unprecedented fact in his previous mandates. The Prime Minister indicated that during his third term, he will continue with the good work of the last decade to meet the aspirations of the citizens.
Continuously, for the third time, the people's love and blessings boost our morale and give new strength to our resolve. We, as Indians, will move forward together and advance the nation. In the third term, the country will write a new chapter of significant decisions.
Worker unions in Nigeria on Wednesday suspended for a week a nationwide strike that had paralyzed airport operations and other basic services for several days. The measure comes after the beginning of talks between the Nigerian Congress of Labor and trade union organizations and the government in search of an agreement that responds to the demands of the workers who are asking for a 16-fold increase in the minimum wage. In this sense, the labor organizations warn that if the objectives demanded are not met, they would resume the strike without notice. In the meantime, Nigerian workers and people continue to support the strike and the initiatives of the Nigerian Labor Congress. The International Festival of Spanish Literature, Yvan Gil 2024, will hold its 4th edition in 12 cities around the world. The festival will be held from June 10th to the 14th through a unique neural network of global dimensions activated by the Cervantes Institute, a worldwide non-profit organization created by the Spanish government to promote the Spanish language and culture. More than 110 authors from 24 countries will discuss, reflect, write, and speak in Spanish and about the Spanish language, some in front of an audience and others through the radio or in online format. Like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and also on TikTok. For TeleSUR English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.